Welcome back, you filthy exiles. So, it's been a few days since I've done a video, and the reason why is I started off playing a spell slinger for all fire skills, or fireball, and I didn't really like it. Wasn't bad, didn't really like it. And then I was like, hey, why don't I try something completely different, and let's look at Manabond, because this seems to be a bit of a meta build, or an element of a meta build this league. So anyway, I respect, and yeah, this is actually quite good. You would have seen it in the B-roll. Map clear at T16, no issues whatsoever. Can face tank bosses now the way that I've done it, but there are a couple of caveats with using Manabond. Number one, and we'll talk about the gearing, is chaos damage is a huge bloody problem for this build, which means it's going to limit some bosses that you can do efficiently without deaths. And Cyrus becomes a problem as well, because Cyrus does chaos damage. You know, my effective life pool is 17, so that's a little bit of an issue, even though I've got 9,000 energy shield and nearly 8,000 mana. The other problem with this build is Manabond and the way that it balances using Arcane Cloak, or its damage multiplies using Arcane Cloak, means that in order for me to maximize damage, I've got to release my Tempest Shield. And now that puts me up to a damage level of... So this is just the tree setup, and I've done some rejigging here to make it work. This has got Cyrus damage ticked on A9, everything else. So the way that Manabond works, it relies on how much mana you physically have, unreserved mana. So if you have mana that's reserved, it's going to decrease your damage. So I use Tempest Shield to almost achieve a max block on this character, with Flasking as just about max block. Now if I take Tempest Shield off, I go almost up to 1,000,000 DPS. This is not including Sigil of Power, because POB doesn't account for Sigil of Power. So therein lies part of the problem, in that, yeah, Tempest Shield increases. This is one of those builds where you either have to pick between defense or offense, but you can't have them both. So if you take off Tempest Shield, you know, you still get okay block chance. Spell block goes to absolute shit. But if you put it on, you get spell block. That's the difference. So entirely up to how you want to play. I would suggest, depending on the type of boss, if you're taking on like a Minotaur, tick it off, increase your damage. If you're versing a boss that does... you know, damage with spells, then tick it back on and hope to dear God. That's the biggest, that's I guess the biggest thing about this build, is it's very, sits on the edge. I don't currently have a mana flask in the build either, and you do need to have a mana flask, and the reason why is you basically have to wait for when certain chaos bosses make their move, and then you need to flask up, because I'll explain why. It's based on the chess piece that we use for this. So anyway, this is a Hierophant, level 90. It originally was a Hellfire Slinger, as I like to coin the term, but I didn't like the build, and so respect it. Now this is max resistance, max block, 9,000 energy shield, nearly 8,000 or 7.6 thousand mana. i.e. Manabond, we're using that. Now, this uses some really, and almost a good amount of chaos resist as well. Now, this uses some really, we avoid all ailments effectively too. This uses some really interesting high IQ gearing to get this to work, none of which is cheap, which is why I would never recommend this as a league starter build, but as a build later down the track, it is quite fun. So anyway, let's have a look at the itemization. So, number one, we are using a Mjolner. I finally get to use a Mjolner. I've been waiting so long to use this damn hammer. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Which means two things. You will not be able to run physical damage reflect maps, and you will not be able to run elemental damage reflect maps. They will instantly kill you. So rule those out, and you will not be able to run non-regen maps, because we rely pretty heavily on regen. So 3 modifiers, you ain't gonna be able to make that work. So how Mjolnir works is it triggers a socketed lightning spell on hit with a point. So it's basically cast on trigger. Socketed lightning spells have no cost if triggered, so that means Manabond has no cost. But you know, the downsides of this is 300 intelligence, 200 strength requirement. And there's one way that we get around this on the Hierophant, because you will note that I do not meet the requirements. This requires 412 strength, but I can still use it at 350 strength, and there's a reason why. So anyway, we are using the Indigon. You do need the enchant with Arcane Cloak, spends an additional 15% of current mana, and that means we can get our mana pool down, and the less mana we have, the more damage we do with our Manabond, because mana scales damage based off 35% of missing unreserved mana. So less mana equals more damage. Which is, funnily enough, this sparks a balance between generating mana to sustain the skills and then having mana missing so that you can do more damage without that mana. So we use an Indigon. This gives us recover 10% of life when you use a mana flask. So yeah, we're going to be using mana flask as well. Once I look at that further, I'll probably switch out this basalt flask once I get a good mana flask. And you get increased spell damage for mana spent recently up to 2,000. So yeah, 22 increased spell damage for each 200 mana, up to 2,000 increased spell damage. So as you spend mana, it progressively winds up and does more and more damage, which is how this build works. Now, how we get around the hammer problem is at Series Foible, and basically this gives you mad levels of mana regen, a huge amount of flat mana, and 25% reduced attribute requirements for gear, which is pretty important, and it means that you can use gear that you otherwise wouldn't be able to fit on its character. This does use a Prism Guardian. It is a low life build, and we'll talk about gems soon, but yeah, pretty basic stuff. I do have 2 amethyst rings. Now, the crafts that you need on these rings is basically flat attributes and flat mana, and any resistances or any other attributes you can get. That's pretty much it. The same applies with the belt. It seems complicated when you look at the build, but really, like, you could put trash items on this build outside of the key uniques that it needs and do quite well. Now, this one does use the Ivory Tower, which drops from Cyrus, and I haven't seen it drop so frequently, but basically how the Ivory Tower works is 32 maximum energy shield is provided for each 100 life reserved. So the more life, so as you increase life, the more energy shield you're going to be able to push. So if you go for, you know, health reservation nodes, which I haven't done yet, down here written in blood, this is going to significantly push your energy shield up, for example, to the point where you get over like 10, 12,000 energy shield. Though it won't matter, because you're relying on this damage defense layer here, which means chaos damage is taken from mana before life, which is where I talk about the balance of mana. So we rely on mana being exceptionally low. The problem with that is when we take chaos damage, and if our mana's low, it'll pull straight from our health pool, because unlike with chevrons, you can't get around that. There's no sort of resolving that problem, and it's going to basically kill you instantly. So you've got to have a mana flask and then balance it out and wait and telegraph boss moves, so then you can hit it at the right time. That being said, if approached correctly, and this build is a really sort of low spec of this type of build, then you could basically like 4-hit bosses. But I haven't gotten to that level yet, and I don't know if I'll push the build to that level. Let me know in the description if you want me to keep pushing this build. We're at nearly league end, so you know I've got currency to burn, and by all means it might be worth the effort. The one thing that I might do is consider buying a squire, and that'll just make this build completely unachievable for the, you know, the everyday player. But that might be the one way that we push the damage up, because I'm aware of a build that is using a squire, and basically means you can 6-link Manabond, which would be insanely powerful and would just basically crush everything in the game. You wouldn't need to worry about defense. That's where offense is your best defense. So from there, we use the Shaper's Touch. Pretty simple stuff. It's a Shaper drop, very cheap set of gloves. If you can get a good Corrupt or a good Crangle on it, then by all means do that. The Hypnotic Eye Jewel that we use in the belt does give us phasing. It's basically just maximum energy shield and some crit multi, even though we don't need crit multi. Just one that I had lying about. My belt, just maximum intelligence, because intelligence stat surprisingly increases a lot here. So the more int stacking you can do on this, the better. But it needs to be a balance. You want to hit about 800 is what I found was a sweet spot. So I'm a little bit lacking here. And then we use the Stampede with the Primal Spirit Anoint. Now, just bear in mind, you can't have a enchant if you have an anoint on these boots, and these were blight specific boots. The reason why is our movement speed then is unfettered, and that means that we can go full speed with our cyclone. And that's pretty much it. Now, flasking, you don't need basalt, you'll need a mana flask, so I got to switch this one out. I do use an overflowing chalice, and we do use the coruscating elixir. And the reason why we use that is this basically stops chaos damage from bypassing energy shield during its effects. So while this is up during maps, and in fact we might even use two of these, one that will self-cast, one that will cast, it means that chaos damage will hit the energy shield pool while you're basically doing your thing. If anything, what I might actually do is have two of these flasks instead and have one that I trigger manually. So when this one's down, I can hit that one on bosses. We use a Rumi's Concoction because this basically gets us close to max block. Obviously, we don't have max block without it, so bam, that gets up 75 and 66, so close enough. And then a Granite Flask, which gives us attack speed, and this gets us to the maximum tick rate that we need for our Mjolnir to be able to hit and cast as many Manabond hits as we possibly can. Now, where possible, I just bought level 21 gems, and yeah. So, as far as mapping of the skills, I've got Arcane Cloak set up for my movement skill button. I do have Q with Vortex, and I'll talk about gems shortly. Basically, you just hold down your Q and your W button, and then cyclone around, and it'll do its thing. Now, we'll talk about gemming now, I guess. So, yeah, let's get into gemming. Alright, so gem setups on this build, pretty different to what other builds. We're using cast on channel, which are not used in many builds as of late. So pretty much we're going to use, in our helm, we'll be using Vortex, Hex Touch, and I have Conductivity, and then Tempest. Now there is a tree where you can put two hexes in, if you want to call them that, or curses, and then you go up and take this Whispers of Doom. By all means, you can do that if you want. I'm not doing that because I want to run max block. And then we're running Manabond, Concentrated Effect, and Awakened Lightning Penetration. The reason why I'm using Awakened is it's nice and cheap in our Mjolnir, and then this then scales with the damage from the Mjolnir, so it does pretty good damage from there. In the shield, we're running Discipline, Purity of Elements, and Wrath. Now, there is a build that I've seen that does switch out or move the Discipline into a socketed ring, reserves Discipline, and uses Zealotry. Which I did try, and I would not advocate you doing that unless you've got a Squire or something like that. Then you're just looking at maxing out damage. This setup works well currently. And then chest-wise, so you will need an Ivory Tower with 2 green and 4 blue. And this is basically going to be our arc skill, which you would have seen in the B-roll at the start, which is where we basically go around and slam everything and kill everything as we cycle it around. So, and this is a cast while channel setup, so we're running a 21 arc, Awaken Control Destruction, but you can run Control Destruction. I've just had this one leveling up. Cast while channeling, now you would want Awaken cast while channeling. This will have a better tick rate and cast a lot quicker. Faster attacks, because we want to attack as fast as we can. Awaken Lightning Penetration again, and Cyclone. Now, there is an argument that you could switch out Awaken Lightning Penetration and put in, was it that defensive skill while channeling, but entirely up to you. Yeah, that's pretty much our 6 link in our chest, and then basically in our gloves, we're going to run Arcane Cloak with Arcane Surge, and this is going to reduce our mana but increase our damage significantly. And then we're going to run Precision and Arrogance as well, because we want to reserve Precision from HP to push it down to absolute 0. Remember, the more HP that we reserve, the more energy shield we get, because for every 100 life reserved, then we get 30 maximum energy shield. So if we can bottom that out, flatline it, we get more energy shield. But you will hit a limit. 18 was about the limit for where I could push it, because I just don't have enough life left, though I may be able to push it up another level at this point. So in boots, Flame Dash, Sigil of Power, which I've not been able to use in a build for a very long time, which basically means you drop Sigil of Power, and then as you use mana, it juices it up, and then basically that amps up your damage on basically a staged basis. So you get 100 up to 130 added lightning damage per stage, which will ramp up your Manabond. So basically you'll do this when you're about to hit up a boss, fight a boss. Vitality and Clarity then just get reserved from your standard mana pool, as with Tempest Shield, and that's pretty much the build. As far as the gem setups, it's a little bit tedious. There's a little bit more that goes into the thinking behind this build, but it does work. And you were seeing the B-roll, it does chew through bosses right now, but it's got a little bit in the chaos mitigation area that I need to work on. But yeah, I haven't tested this on Cyrus. And I don't know if I will, but as far as a mapping farmer, it's completely proficient as a T16 mapping farmer, and honestly, really, really fun. But yeah, let's get into the tree. Alright, tree-wise with this one's a bit of a head fuck. So, basically we're starting at the Templar starting zone here, if we want to call it that. And then pretty much we're going to move across, pick up Righteous Decree. I didn't pick up max block until like level 85. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, level 84. The reason why is I just didn't need it at that point until level 84. And this actually helps you max out your resistances as well, because this build is really hard to max resistances with the way that you have to gear rings and whatnot for attributes. Then from there, actually, we will need to change this ring out because we can do better with this up the damage, and we'll just get rid of our chaos resist because it makes no difference anyway. If we're going to take chaos damage, we're going to take chaos damage. But anyway, then we'll come down. I did put in a just a standard. This is just for attribute points essentially. This can be much better. I would go for attack speed, energy shield, and strength and dexterity, or increases to mana where possible. And then basically you'll come across, this does use Iron Will, Dynamo, which means once you've got a guard skill up, they last for longer and you get increased mana because we need to stack mana. That's what we're targeting. You'll come up now. Oh, pardon me. Always when I'm recording, my nose goes off. So in here, you'll actually have an Unnatural Instincts, which I understand is not cheap. So if you can't afford a 4.5x duel, then basically just take these two mana nodes in here and chuck something that increases mana in here or whatever. Like, you don't necessarily need this, but it does give you some really good attributes around this area, like cast speed, area of effect in particular. So what Unnatural Instincts does is it allocates all small passive points in this zone, and it negates these points here. It doesn't cancel out Shaper, which is good. And then we'll come up, we'll grab Dreamer and Forethought. We'll grab Foresight as well, and the Energy Shield Mastery for stun threshold is based on 50% of Energy Shield. The reason why is there's a very high likelihood that you're going to get stunned with this build, and that's an absolute pain in the ass. Then you'll come up, you'll pick up this dual socket node here, which I have a Watcher's Eye. And now, the Watcher's Eye is very specific. You do need gain 9% of maximum gain percentage of maximum mana as extra energy shield while affected by clarity. Unfortunately, this is a 4 to 5x Watcher's Eye, so not necessarily cheap, and this will impact significantly on your total amount ES bill. As you can see, we go from 7,747 to 9,000, so that's nearly what 1,300 ES that impacts. Then we'll come up, we'll pick up Insightfulness and Energy Shield Mastery to gain 3% of maximum mana as Energy Shield. You'll come up, you'll pick up Zealot's Oath. You won't do this until you have enough ES to sustain the build though. I do have the Might Mastery, or the Might point here as well, just because I needed that added strength. If I took that out, I wouldn't have enough strength to run the build. We do use Elemental Overload, so you will need that. Unnatural Calm. Here we actually use a Healthy Mind, which I know nobody uses in builds, but I used it in this one. And this is a Corrupted Blood cannot be inflicted on your Healthy Mind, which was about 1x. And what this means is these nodes here now provide mana instead of health, which that's also increases amplified by 200%. So instead of 10% life, we get 20% mana, which increases our ES and increases our mana pool. Then we come across, we pick up Prodigal Perfection. Now we could pick up these nodes in here as well, but I haven't leveled up to 100 with this character, so it's not feasible. Then we come down and we pick up these nodes down here, Practical Application, and also Heart and Soul and Arcane's Dominion. Now, we don't necessarily need to have this. We could just chuck points into here, but actually, no, we need to do this because we just can't get over here with the number of points we have, and we don't have enough attribute points in our gearing to be able to handle this otherwise. And then we'll come down, pick up Painful Pain Attunement. This gives us 30% more spell damage while on low life. We are obviously on low life. Then we come up, we pick up Static Blows, and the Lightning Mastery for increases and reductions to maximum damage also apply to Shock at 30% of the value, which means Shock gets amplified exponentially with the amount of mana you have. Then you'll come up and pick up Utmost Intellect, because this does have an element of int stacking in it. And then you'll get Attribute Mastery, it's 5% increased attributes. This is going to push our intelligence up, which is going to increase our mana, and it's going to increase our shield, and it's going to increase our damage. Ipso facto, makes the build better. Then we'll come across, and we need this cluster jewel node here. And in here, we've got Widespread Destruction, Scintillating Idea, and this gives us 20% increased maximum mana, pardon me, and then Storm Drinker. Now, in the jewel sockets here, we do have 2 split personality jewels, which I understand, well actually no, they're only like 5 chaos, and you want to go intelligence or strength and maximum mana, or anything else. I unfortunately could not get the optimum jewels because nobody wanted to sell them, which was a pain in the ass. But anyway, that's the roll there. And as you'll see, this yellow line, that's indicating that for each one of these points, it's getting amplified by split personality. So 25% increased effect per allocated passive skill between starting class. So that means that for each of these points, I get another 5 intelligence with both of these stacking. And then we'll come down and we'll pick up Influence and the Life Reservation Efficiency of Skills point. And this is basically going to mean that we can stack our Precision against our Life, so we can have 4 auras coming in against Life instead of just 3. And also allows us to stack 3 big auras against our life pool on our Prism Guardian. That's pretty much the tree. And then for Ascendancies, we're going to go to Arcane. Actually, you don't want that first. You'll go Divine Guidance first, Sanctuary Thought second, Conviction of Power third, and then Arcane Blessing fourth. And that's pretty much, yeah, pretty much the tree. Alright, so yeah, if you guys want to see me min-max this more, by all means, let me know. As far as mapping goes, you know, I've just been smashing T16 maps as of late and just generating currency like a monster. You know, I think I made like 20 or 30x yesterday just from mapping and Cyrus farming. Had a Awakened Spell Echo drop, which was a nice 15x sale. But yeah, anyway, if you like this video, like and sub. Yeah, and let me know if you want to see any other weird and wacky or interesting builds. I was looking at doing that random build generating program, or I think it's like a website where you can basically spin a wheel or whatever and it'll generate a random build, and it'll be completely weird and wacky. I was having to think about what I could do with that moving forwards into the future. But yeah, if you want to see more of this, let me know. Until next time, have a good one, and bye.